I am Donika,
And I am Myra, and this is a Black Women Healing Podcast.
a space to discuss mental wellness,
a space to dive into soul care and vulnerability.
Here, we will support you on your journey as you focus on your healing,
while also giving you the work along the way.
Welcome to Black Women Healing Podcast. I am here to announce that our book, Let's Heal, a workbook designed for Black women with various modalities by your co-host Donika and Myra, is now at a storefront. And so the storefront is Urbana Goods. It's a community store that brings an upgraded experience of connecting with the community with small crafting gatherings and workshops and supporting other local businesses by housing and selling their merchandise, such as us. And they even sell some of your typical items from the local convenience store. Like, y'all, I literally bought some body butter, hair products, and a cute purse all from this store, just to give you a little example. So when you have some time, check out Urbana Goods. It's located in Gardena, California. The actual address is 1756 West El Segundo, Gardena, California, 90249. You can put it in your GPS, whatever you need to do, but go ahead and make your way there and check us out.
Hey y'all, we are back with another episode of Black Women Healing Pod, and as usual, we have a special guest. Something we've been doing is talking a little bit about quotes that we found. Oftentimes, Donika has an archive of quotes, but today I'm coming with a quote, and the quote is from Janelle Monáe. And so what we typically do, Candace, is I'll share the quote and then we talk about it a little bit. So the quote is, "Perfection is often the enemy of greatness." And the reason why I chose this quote in particular is because I've been in a lot of conversations about productivity and perfectionism, and realizing that I struggle to have those conversations because I'm oftentimes pushing people that struggle with perfectionism. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm pushing them in the ways that I should. Like, I'm like, stop thinking like that. So that's why I chose it, because it's been heavy on my mind. Donika, what you thinking?
Really quickly, you say you've been pushing people. What do you mean? I'm confused.
Like, for example, my younger brother, we've been in a lot of conversations about perfectionism, and I was telling him literally, like, I struggle to support people who struggle with perfectionism. Like, that's one thing I don't have the language for, because my thing is, give yourself grace. That's what they struggle with. Literally, that's what they struggle with. Give yourself a moment to say that your mistakes are learning opportunities. That's what they literally struggle with. And that's where I'm finding myself struggling with, how do I even give language to it, or like just support them in that? So yeah,
no, it makes sense. Because when I think about you too, I think you're a person who you'll just do it, it'll eventually, you continue to get better and better, but you don't you don't need to know every single thing for you to get started, because technically there's no such thing. And I think that's what this kind of comes to, like this. If you try to be perfect, then you will never get to be great, because you're continuously waiting, because there's no, in my opinion, there's no such thing as perfect. Yeah, I feel like this comes up a lot with clients, especially Black women, especially if you feel like you have to be perfect. I was talking to this girl, and she said, she's one of my team, one of the girls on the dance team I'm on, and she was like that she's not performing because her routine is not perfect, and she blames on her being a Virgo. Y'all do know Virgos are perfectionists. And so I'm like, there's no such thing. And she said, well, it needs to be as close as possible to it. And I'm just like, oh, that's so hard to measure. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, it's really, you can't really measure that. It's like, if you doing the best you can, that's technically perfect. That's it, So what about you, Candace? What you think about this quote?
Yeah, I love this quote, and I think it's so true. And actually, growing up, I think I was definitely more of a perfectionist. Like, had to be there every day at school, tried to get perfect attendance, good grades, and everything. And then after I've gotten older, I started to reject that, because for me, I found that it was more of a trauma response, like a fear of like judgment from what happens, if you're not perfect. But now, especially what I do, like creatively, like if you wait for perfection, you're never ever going to get it done. And what I've found is that you're always kind of improving, but you can't really improve unless you get feedback. So perfection does seem very detrimental to being successful, because if you're just sitting with whatever you're working on and no one else is ever seeing it, like you're not really gaining that perfectionism anyway, because you only have your own thoughts and insights on it.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Myra, for that quote. That was a good one. Okay, Janelle Monáe. Yeah, she been living her best life right now too.
Hey, I
That's
love
that's
her.
why I
I'm
chose
loving
it.
her latest album.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and officially introduce our guest. So today's guest is Candace D. Patrick, a Los Angeles-based writer, director, and producer. She found her screenwriting passion in high school and earned her BA in screenwriting from Loyola Marymount University. Her stories authentically depict human journeys through exploring themes of grief, mental health, joy, and debunking stereotypes. Notable work includes the acclaimed short film, The Fifth Room, and her upcoming project, Finding JaMia's Spirit. Earned her selection as a 2023 Real Sisters Micro Budget Film Fellow. Currently as marketing director for Semester at Sea, Candace combines her love for travel with her creative pursuits. So thanks so much for being here today. Yeah, like you've been doing your thing as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's been definitely been a journey, and I feel like I'm, staying consistent and trying to walk into my purpose, my season. So
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into this. So as a filmmaker, how challenging is it to pull from your personal experiences in your creative process?
yeah, as a filmmaker, it can be very challenging to pull from personal experiences. I think filmmaking in general, are really like any type of creative art form, is always going to be challenging, because if you're making it public, you're putting it out there for people to naturally critique and judge it. So they're either going to love it or they're going to hate it, or be indifferent. But when you're pulling from personal experiences, you kind of take those hits a little bit harder. Um, and at times it made me even question my reality, because I've written scripts uh, based on personal experience, sent them out for feedback, and someone will reply, "Oh, that's not realistic." And I'm like, "But wait, but what do you mean? That happened to me. Like, it is realistic." So, it kind of, makes you question like your life experiences. It can also be very like triggering, especially if you're writing about really vulnerable experiences. It can be triggering to recall certain experiences, and it can also be triggering for a reader. Like, I've written stuff without and unintentionally trigger someone else, and then I feel bad if someone doesn't know the context of the story. But I think despite the challenges, it can also be very rewarding, and it can be healing. And I often take the things that happen to me, and sometimes I change the ending so that there can be more joy in that. And then also hearing, from people who've seen something I've done, reach out and say, "Oh, this really resonated with me," or "I really related to this," or "This had this impact." Like, that makes me feel like not so alone, and it makes me feel like the work I'm doing is not just entertainment, but it can also have some kind of impact.
Yeah. So then let's even take like a deeper dive and talk about how your work as a filmmaker has been in alignment with your healing journey.
Yeah, so my work aligns with my healing journey in many ways. I've always been more expressive in written communication than verbal communication. And so whether it's poetry or random notes or sticky notes, I have a lot of uh, sticky notes. I send a lot of money to the postal company, whoever they are, and or even like screenplays. That's really how I heal. And I don't like to think that I write from a place of trauma. I do like to think that I write from a place of like healing and joy. So even if there is some like traumatic like elements, I don't like to think I'm doing, oh, like a trauma film. Like, no, what's the healing in here?
Mhm.
And I try to identify a place of healing for me, or like for others who might have a connection with the story or a specific character.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that take on it too. It makes me, I mean, I don't know why, but I'm gonna tell y'all what's coming to mind. It's making me think about like slavery movies. And
Mhm.
how like every time a slavery movie come out, everybody's like, "Oh, another one, like why y'all keep doing this to us?" But like this piece of like getting to, well, in regards to history, but you get to recreate it for now, right? That's the creative piece of it all. So I love that, like being able to like have a different outcome or change different things about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were
Yeah, I
making
mean,
sorry, go ahead, Candace.
I was gonna say, yeah, I mean the thing with the slavery films, I feel like those are pieces of resilience. You know, like we're all, African descendants, we're descendants of people that were resilient, that fought. We're here because they survived. And then there were people that didn't survive, and like we're here to like tell those stories. And I think it's not, as long as like that's not all of our media, that's not the consumption of how we're represented, I don't have a problem with those. I feel like, who is this person? What is their story? What is this different take on it? There's definitely a lot about slavery that I think has been sugar-coated, and we're not getting the full history of what happened, but it also is very traumatic. So I think you also have to be in a place to receive that too.
Yes, most definitely. What I was going to say was it makes me think about how we are history, right? Because we come from our ancestors, and the work that we do is now creating new history. And even thinking about you and your stories and that you're telling, how you're creating new history and creating new narratives, and how even that within itself is healing. So I feel like that's just so powerful within itself.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Tell us about JaMia's spirit and how that has been aligned with your healing journey.
Yeah, so Finding JaMia's Spirit is inspired by my dad. My dad died when I was 11 from stomach cancer. And it was weird because he had been struggling with cancer for a few years, maybe like 1 to 2 years from what I recall. But it still, his death was unexpected to me. I didn't think he was actually gonna die. It felt like he was just sick and he was gonna get better. But after he died, the kind of what people say is, "Oh, your dad went to a better place." That's like the first line of compassion, and that's kind of what's reiterated whenever it's like, "Oh, I miss my dad," or when she would say, "Oh, don't worry, he's in a better place." And I, as a kid, like as 11, I understood what that meant. Like it means like heaven from how I grew up. I know that means something different for different religions. And but I even as an adult, I hate that terminology. I feel like there's a different way that we could explain what happens to someone when they leave, especially for a young kid. So with Finding JaMia's Spirit, I took a younger kid, like a 5-year-old, who also lost her dad, and they tell her dad's in a better place. And she doesn't understand that. She's like, wait, my dad, my best friend went to his better place and just left me behind. Like, can I come? Like, why can't I go to this better place? Like, so
Yeah.
I really wanted to, look at this little kid going through that um, experience and figuring out a different way, figuring out one, like how are kids interpreting this and how can we find a different way to communicate this message? How can we help this child connect with, her dad even after she's gone? And figuring out not just for kids, really for adults too, because even as an adult, I, struggle with connecting with my dad and people I've loved that have, lost when passed away. Um, Uh, and then yeah, I think as far as like my healing journey with creating Finding JaMia's Spirit, it almost feels like I'm grieving my dad again, because I pulled a lot from my dad when writing the script, but now we're out crowdfunding and trying to get supporters, and so I'm talking about my dad's story and looking at pictures of my dad. It has been very triggering, and even thinking about how I connect with my dad as an adult, like so many years later. It's almost like I feel like I don't know if I didn't fully grieve as a kid or if I'm just grieving in a different way as an adult, or a combination of both. I don't know, because the thing about grief is, I always say like it affects you, but then life like moves on, life goes on, and then you can either stay there or you have to like you're catching up with everything, and so at some point it felt like life moved on when I was a kid, and then to catch up, it's like, okay, there's no time to grieve anymore, and now I'll come back to um but I think it's been a necessary part of the journey for me.
Yeah,
Wow.
no. I mean, as you said that, as soon as you said as soon as you start telling about Finding JaMia's Spirit, I immediately thought like, wow, every time you talk about this, you have to say that your dad died, right? Every single time.
Yeah.
So many times, constant, like, and you're going to be talking about this hopefully for a while, right? And so
yeah,
every single time. So I mean, one, I just want to say how courageous and brave that is to tell such a story, right? Sometimes I think filmmakers and creatives choose stories that may not be as triggering as you say, or like this piece of you even noticing that the grief is coming up and how maybe you didn't get to process it as a kid, but also how different it looks now as an adult. So I mean, I just want to say how courageous I think that is. And yeah, like from the clips I have seen of Finding JaMia's Spirit, I agree. I think that, when we talk to kids about death, or even adults, a lot of times it's just not, there's technically not any words, but there's not better explanations of what's happening here. So yeah, I just had to say that. Myra, was you gonna say something? I'm sorry.
No, I'm in right alignment with like what you're saying. It is making me wonder, how do you feel like this is impacting your relationship with your dad? Like, if you think about like continuing that relationship with him and having to continue to have conversations about him, I'm just wondering like your thoughts on that, because it makes me think about, for me personally, when loved ones go on, for me, I've come to tell myself that if I continue to tell stories about them, I'll keep them alive and I'll keep their spirit around me, versus like ones that I may not talk about so much, trying to talk about them more to keep their spirit around me and to keep them just alive, and existing in my life. So I'm wondering how you think about it for yourself.
Yeah, that's kind of been this journey for you, even before the film. It's something I've like talked to my therapist about too, because like the yearning for the connection, it doesn't go away as the years go on. And I don't know if that's a common thing that people think, that eventually like you get over someone, but you don't. You just gotta miss them in different ways.
Mm.
And so trying to find a way to connect with him was been hard. Like I have these like tangible items that I kept like from when when we were a kid. Like I still have like our baseball gloves, because like I used to play t-ball and he was my coach. And I have his like camera, and I have like his watch, and they're like tangible things, but they don't kind of, I'm glad that I have them, but they don't give me the connection that I need. And for a long, even though I know like my dad was sick, right, and he died in a horrible way. It's like for a while, it just felt like, man, like you just left me, like you're my best friend. You like left me, and like how do I feel that connection? And so I have to say it's still like an ongoing journey for me. I'm trying to figure out how can I connect him, and also how can I like be open to different ways of connecting with him that are not how I was raised, and not as common. But like, I'm trying to figure out like how can I have that a kind of a spiritual connection with my dad. And that's where I am in my life now. Like when things happen, are they just random things, or is it, should I open myself to the possibility that maybe that's my dad trying to communicate with me, or other like ancestors trying to communicate with me?
Mhm.
And so I don't know if I answered your question,
No, you definitely did. Thank you for that. Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of a little bit of what Myra was asking with that question, but I was wondering, what were your first beliefs about the afterlife? And what are your current beliefs?
yeah. So, my first beliefs around the afterlife were very much rooted in Christianity. My dad was a minister, as were several uncles are still, at the church. My grandfather was. I grew up Pentecostal, so church all day on Sunday,
Mhm.
revivals, uh, Bible study, the whole thing. Like I was in it, and so how I was raised is that someone dies, they either go to heaven or they go to hell. My dad was a beautiful, like positive, this amazing person, so he went to heaven, right? And then we have no connection with them at all. They just go to heaven, and we don't see them again or we don't see them or connect with them in any way until they die, or until we die.
Mhm.
And so that's how I was raised. And so it, And then, so yeah, that felt like a sudden, like, they're here and then they're not here. And then we feel them no more, you know? But as an adult, you know, and really now, like in more recent years, I don't feel like we lose content. I do think there's like a spiritual world that they go to, whether that's heaven or whether it's, you know, what someone else might call it. Cause you know, I believe in God, I believe there's one God, but I know that people have different ways of connecting with God. And so, you know, whatever that spiritual place is there, but I don't think there's this hard line where there's no connection to us anymore. I feel like I'm trying to like open myself to those, to the possibility that I can just have a connection, that, you know, he is here with me, guiding me, and protecting me. And, you know, it's not like I can't have a connection with him again until I die. So that's kind of where my journey is kind of going now, and really like trusting my intuition, you know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. Thanks for giving us insight on where you are now. Um, how have your family and friends reacted to this particular piece of work from you?
Yeah, so you know, my family and friends and religious community have been very supportive. You know, a lot of shared experience of someone losing someone as well. And kind of also, you know, being told that this person went to a better place, and a lot of, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's, we shouldn't say that they got to a better place. Like, what's a different way to say that? You know, not, and it's not to say like that heaven doesn't exist or the spiritual world doesn't exist, but what is a different way to communicate that, especially with kids. I've also had, you know, other family members, other friends who've lost someone as a kid, and they've mentioned like, yeah, you know what, that did kind of make me feel a certain way. Like, why do we say that? So, you know, are just being told to be strong, you know, and kind of keep it moving when someone goes on. So I think I've had a lot of support from the community, which makes me feel like it's definitely like the right time to do this project, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's always beautiful when we get like that support. And so I'm glad that everybody is receiving it, especially like your close folks. And so, and when the larger community receives it, I think that is just even, it's a, you know, a greater feeling, even more greater. But when your family and people who are close to you, that's why I asked that question. Um, but so at the end of our podcast, we always do takeaways. And so it could be anything you want to leave with our audience, with the listeners. We most definitely will be sharing your crowdfunding for sure. But like anything that you want the listeners to know.
Yeah, I guess like my main takeaway is like knowing that grief has like no timeline, you know, and allow yourself to be like comfortable with that. I think I've cried like more in the past few months working on this project than I've cried like as a kid.
Mm.
And I'm like allowing myself to do that. So, you know, allow yourself to like participate in the grief journey at whatever point it happens in your life, because it's gonna happen anyway. And also allow yourself to like, you know, think about the impossible. You know, when you think about like, is someone there with you, guiding you, protecting you? You know, are random things not as random? You know, for me, it might be like, I don't know, the light is flickering. It's the circuit just messed up, or is it, I don't know. Is that something else? So, you know, try to think about that. Um, and should I say something about like the project, like where you can go to follow and support and stuff like that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then if you want to support Finding JaMia's Spirit, the short film, you can make a pledge on our Indiegogo page. You can just go to Indiegogo.com and search for Finding JaMia's Spirit. You can also follow our journey on Instagram. Our page is at JaMia's Spirit Film. You can also connect with me at Candace D Patrick, or on Instagram. That's Candace with no N and with the A. And yeah, I'm always happy to, you know, if you have a shared like journey of losing someone and trying to find a connection, like, hey, slip in my DMs, because that's definitely a conversation I'm having right now.
Yes. Thank you for that. I hope you all enjoyed this episode with Candace. This was amazing. And I look forward to seeing this film. We really hope y'all enjoyed this episode. I wanted to make sure that we share some resources if you were listening to this episode and it started to make you think about your grief journey. And so I want to share with y'all that we did do an episode about grief, season 1, episode 18, with our fave, J. Nicole, the grief bully. You can also check out J. Nicole on Instagram under the grief bully. And she also has a podcast on grief, again, called the grief bully. Also, if you're wanting to do a deeper dive on your grief journey, there's a great book called The Grief and Recovery Handbook. It can be for a loss of a loved one, a breakup, a loss of a job, an estranged relationship, anything tied to grief. So be sure to check those out. And I hope that these are useful resources for you all.